Hey guys, I wanted to send this video off to kind of get us rolling with the semester and the actual way it'll work, what the assignments look like at the very beginning. Let me tell you a little bit about how I see the semester working because this is a little bit different. It's online. Normally, when I've taught online courses, there's been a bigger group of students, and so we've scheduled weekly kind of Skype sessions where we're doing class that way with a whole group in session. That doesn't really make sense for just two students. So the way we're going to navigate that is as follows. Um, I'm going to send you videos that kind of give you brief instructions as to what that section in the course will look like. So this will be the first one here. And so I'm going to kind of give a background of what we're going to be looking at. A lot of what we're going to do in this course is you're going to watch a lot of videos and it'll be good stuff. So a lot of it will be right there on YouTube. What I'll do, and actually you have it here in your email attachment that this is part of, is a number of different YouTubes for you to watch. And so what this first section is going to look like is before we ever even get into the civil rights movement, really the first quarter of this class has to give kind of the background as to the why. Why has the history of the United States, particularly, but really all of the Americas, all of the colonial territories that Europe kind of inhabited. Why were there slaves, particularly those who were taken from Africa and settled in the new territories? The United States is obviously what we're focusing on, but just know this right off the bat. The majority of Africans that were taken and brought over to the New World as slaves, number one, the majority didn't survive the trip. Secondly, the majority of them that came and survived actually didn't end up in the United States. So, for instance, Brazil had far more slaves than the United States did. The Caribbean had more slaves than the United States did. Just realizing that this problem went way broader than just the United States. In fact, there's something in East Africa that's called the Arab slave trade. We don't really learn a whole lot about that. Most slaves that were brought to the new lands in the Americas came from West Africa. East Africa, places like Somalia, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Kenya, they had slaves taken and were brought to the Arab world. And the Arab slave trade was particularly bad. So this was a big problem that emerged. Now the slave trade didn't exist as we know it for forever, right? Like now slavery has been around forever, but not the sort of slave trade where it was racially based. In fact, slavery throughout the ancient world had nothing to do with race particularly. It had to do with the weakness of one nation over and against the other. So, for instance, Rome is a great example. The Roman Empire at one point was made up of maybe 40 to 50% slaves. Now, think about that, 40 to 50% slaves in the entire empire. At its height, Roman population would have been about 30 million people throughout the empire. Doesn't sound that big by today's standards, but in the ancient world, that would have been enormous. To have 12 to 15 million of those 30 be slaves, it was a big problem because those who were not slaves couldn't get jobs because all of the farms were worked by slaves. And so it caused economic problems. It kept the poor poor and the rich very rich. And then slavery, where slaves came from countries that Rome conquered. So in some ways, it was looked at as your nation. This is like the natural reality that comes out of your weak state. You were weaker than our government, our military, or you chose to fight us when you should have just surrendered. And as a consequence, we're taking your men, women, and children as captives. It also had religious significance because it stated to the conquered territories, our gods are more powerful than your gods. So this is like slavery is as old as human civilization, right? It's been around every corner of the world. Um, we're going to look here at kind of the earliest backdrop of what the slave trade looked like. So that's what your videos will be. Now, your assignment after you watch these videos that's attached to that actually goes before any of that. Because we know in the Americas, during the time of slavery, there were many slave holders and even people who didn't hold slaves but just lived in certain territories that believed slavery was not only okay, but that they could find biblical support for the institution of slavery. Now, by and large, the colonies that made up the United States and most of the Americas came from European Christian nations. And so Christianity was kind of brought over with that. Um, and yet they have a twisted view of Scripture. So you're going to actually find in one of your assignments here, and I'm actually looking for it right here. Yeah. What I'm going to be asking you to do after you watch your videos is to look at Scripture and try to find passages that were used to justify slavery and those that were used to justify segregation. Segregation was after slavery was abolished. Um, African Americans, particularly, were still kept at arm's length from white populations. This is why they couldn't get certain jobs. It's why they couldn't go to the same schools, ride on the same buses. And there were people who used the Bible to actually support that. And so, and you guys are students here at Kingswood, so you know that anytime you isolate verses or small passages of the Bible from the broader picture of the whole, you can make it say some pretty backwards and twisted things. So I want you to look for what are some like passages that you would think would support slavery, and then like part of that has like a number of scripture verses that I gave you. Like what I'm wanting you to do with this is to kind of like enter into the shoes of those people who lived during those times. Most of them were uneducated. Many couldn't read. This is what they were taught and what they heard. So, like, how would you even frame this? What I'd like you to do in response to that, I don't want you to send me papers back. I think it's so much easier for me to just capture your thoughts like I'm doing right here on video. So I'd like you to actually send me a video, jot some notes down for yourself and just, tell me, read them to me. Hey, like this is what I see from my examination of scripture. The best way to do that, like there's a couple ways you can send me video. Really, I don't care how you send it as long as I get it. But the way I do it is on my YouTube channel. I make a video and then I put it on YouTube and I send the link. So I'd encourage you to do that. Make a private YouTube channel and then just delete it afterwards. But that's really exciting, right? So like, let's start with that. Let's look at like really the institution. With this section, you're going to look at like the heinous nature of the slave trade. You're going to see how like Africans defeating other African tribes was actually the origin of the slave trade. It was like one tribe would conquer another. They would capture the people and then sell them to Europeans. We have this image that Europeans went into Africa with muskets and just like stole people, but really that's not what it was. They were trading with other African tribes and nations that had conquered other ones. So these videos that you'll see, they show the brutality of the slave trade. So let's aim for no later than next Friday to watch those videos and just send me a video back, and then from that we'll go on. Okay, if you have any questions, email me, text me. Texting is like a really great way to get a hold of me, to be honest. So don't feel like you can't do that. Even if I don't reply right away, I will get back to you, okay? Blessings, you guys. Let me know if you need anything. Hope this helps and makes sense.